Roadside motels are meant to be a place to rest. Nothing more. A quick stop. A few hours of sleep. But some motels don't feel empty, even when the parking lot is. And once you close the door behind you, leaving isn't always easy. I was a single mom, driving my daughter to her grandma's in Oklahoma. We stopped at a motel somewhere off Route 66. I still hear that door creaking open. Even now, even in my own house. My name's Rachel. I'm 36 now, but I was 32 when this happened. I'd been divorced for about a year, and things were still rocky. My ex had moved to California and barely called. I was working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on and food on the table. My daughter, Emma, was only 5 at the time. Too young to understand why Daddy wasn't around anymore. Too young to understand a lot of things. My mom had been asking me to visit for months. She lived in Tulsa and I was in Little Rock, only about a 4-hour drive. But between work and exhaustion, I kept putting it off. Finally, in early March, I decided to make the trip. Emma was on spring break from kindergarten, and I managed to get a few days off. It seemed like the perfect time. We left early on a Thursday morning. The drive was fine at first. Emma sang along to her favorite songs in the back seat, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, normal. Like maybe things were going to be okay. But by the time we hit the Oklahoma border, the sun was setting and Emma was getting cranky. She was tired. I was tired. And I realized I'd miscalculated how long the drive would take with stops for food and bathroom breaks. I decided to find a motel. Just for one night. Get some rest. Finish the drive in the morning. That's when I saw the Sunset Lodge. It was one of those old motels you see along Route 66. The kind that probably looked charming in the 1950s but now just looked forgotten. Faded pink stucco. Cracked asphalt parking lot. A neon sign that buzzed and blinked, casting everything in an eerie red glow. I pulled in around 7 p.m. The parking lot was mostly empty. Just a couple of beat-up trucks and a sedan with out-of-state plates. I unbuckled Emma and carried her inside. She was half asleep, her head resting on my shoulder, her little arms wrapped around my neck. The office was small and smelled like old coffee and cigarette smoke. The woman at the desk was in her 50s, maybe. Thin, nervous looking. She glanced up when I walked in, and for a second, I thought she was going to tell me they were full, but she didn't. Just one night? She asked, her voice quiet. Yeah, just me and my daughter. She hesitated. I could see it in her eyes, like she wanted to say something but wasn't sure if she should. Finally, she reached for a key and slid it across the counter. Room 8, she said. Then, quietly, almost like she didn't want me to hear, keep the deadbolt locked. I looked at her. What? The deadbolt? She repeated, meeting my eyes this time. Keep it locked. All night. I wanted to ask why. Wanted to press her. But Emma was getting heavier in my arms, and I just wanted to get her into bed. So I nodded, took the key, and left. Room 8 was at the end of the building, near the corner where the parking lot lights didn't quite reach. The door was painted red, peeling in places, and the number 8 was hanging crooked, held on by a single screw. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was small but clean enough. 2 double beds with floral bedspreads. A TV on a dresser. A bathroom with yellowed tiles. Nothing special. Nothing obviously wrong. I laid Emma down on the bed closest to the bathroom. She was out cold, her little chest rising and falling in slow, steady breaths. I covered her with the blanket, kissed her forehead, and turned on the TV. Kept the volume low. Just needed some background noise to keep me company. I sat on the other bed and tried to relax. Told myself everything was fine. We'd sleep, wake up early, finish the drive. It was just one night, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The way the woman at the desk had looked at me, the way she'd said, keep the deadbolt locked. I got up and checked the door, turned the deadbolt, tested the handle. It was secure, solid. I told myself I was being paranoid. I wasn't. I must have dozed off sometime after midnight, because I woke up suddenly, my heart pounding, my body tense. The TV was still on, casting flickering blue light across the room. Emma was still asleep, curled up under the blanket. And the door was open. Not all the way, just a crack, maybe 6 inches. Enough that I could see the parking lot outside. The cold night air was rushing in, making the curtains flutter. I sat up, my breath catching in my throat. I stared at the door, my mind trying to make sense of it. I'd locked it. I knew I had. I checked it twice. But the deadbolt was still engaged. I could see it. The metal bolt was still inside the door frame. Locked. But the door was open. I got up slowly, my legs shaking. I walked over to the door and slammed it shut. The sound echoed in the small room, and I winced, glancing back at Emma. She didn't stir. I turned the deadbolt again, checked the handle. It was locked. I looked through the peephole. The walkway outside was empty. No one there. Just the dim glow of the parking lot lights and the hum of the ice machine down the way. I backed away from the door and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at it. My hands were trembling. My heart was racing. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Nothing happened. I started to relax, started to convince myself it was just a faulty lock. An old door, a draft. Then it happened again. The door creaked open, slowly, inch by inch. And this time I heard footsteps, heavy, deliberate, right outside. I didn't think. I just moved. I grabbed Emma, scooping her up in my arms. She woke up, groggy and confused, and started to whimper. "Shoo, baby. It's okay. We're okay." I carried her into the bathroom, locked the door, and sat down on the floor with my back against the tub. Emma was crying now, her little body shaking. I held her close, one hand over her mouth to keep her quiet, my other arm wrapped tight around her. I could hear the footsteps, slow, measured, moving around the room, the creak of floorboards, the rustle of fabric, the sound of something heavy being dragged. Then silence. I sat there, holding my daughter, barely breathing. Minutes passed, maybe an hour. I don't know. Time felt strange, distorted. Finally, I heard the door close. A soft click. Then nothing. I waited, listened. When I was sure it was safe, I unlocked the bathroom door and peeked out. The room was empty. The door was closed. The deadbolt was still locked. But the air was different, colder, heavier, like something had been there and left a piece of itself behind. I didn't sleep, just held Emma and waited for the sun to come up. We left at dawn. I didn't even bother checking out. Just packed our stuff, loaded Emma into the car, and drove to the office. The same woman was there, sitting behind the desk with a cup of coffee. I walked up, my hands still shaking. "What the hell is going on with room 8? She looked at me, didn't seem surprised. "You should have kept the deadbolt locked," she said quietly. "It was locked, the whole time, but the door kept opening." She sighed, set down her coffee. "Room 8 doesn't like to be locked." "What does that mean?" She didn't answer, just shook her head. "You should go. Tell me what happened." She looked away. "A man died there, years ago. Someone broke in, beat him to death. He tried to keep the door closed, tried to lock it, but they got in anyway." I felt sick. "Why do you still rent it out?" "We don't. Not usually. But you came late, and I didn't have anywhere else to put you." I wanted to scream at her, but I didn't. I just grabbed Emma and left. That was 4 years ago. We made it to my mom's, stayed for a week, drove home a different route. I never told anyone what happened. Not my mom, not my friends. Just tried to forget. But I can't, because it didn't stay at the Sunset Lodge. I still hear it, late at night, the creak of the door opening. Slow, deliberate, even though my door is locked. Even though I check it 5, 6, 7 times before bed. And sometimes, I hear the footsteps, heavy, right outside my bedroom, moving through my house like they own it. Emma hears it too. She won't sleep in her own room anymore. Says there's someone in the hallway, someone who won't leave. I don't know what we brought home with us. I don't know if it followed us or if we carried it. But I know it's here, and I know it doesn't like to be locked out. I was on a solo road trip through Arizona when I pulled into a rundown motel called the Cactus Inn. I don't look in mirrors anymore. Not in motels. Not anywhere. Not after what I saw. My name's Jesse. I'm 33 now, but I was 28 when this happened. I was going through what people politely call a rough patch. Lost my job. Broke up with my girlfriend of 4 years. My apartment lease was ending, and I didn't have anywhere to go. So I did what people do when they're trying to run from their problems. I got in my car and drove. No plan. No destination. Just me, a half-empty duffel bag, and the vague idea that maybe if I drove far enough, I could leave all the bad stuff behind. I know how stupid that sounds now, but at the time it felt like the only option I had. I'd been on the road for 3 days when I hit Arizona. It was late October and the desert was cold at night. Colder than I expected. I'd been driving since dawn, and by the time the sun started setting, my eyes were burning and my hands were cramping from gripping the wheel. I needed to stop. That's when I saw the Cactus Inn. It was one of those places that looked like it had been forgotten by time. Single story. Adobe-style walls that were cracked and peeling. A neon sign that buzzed and flickered. Half the letters burned out, so it just read, "Tough." The parking lot was gravel and dirt, and there were only 2 other cars there, both looking like they hadn't moved in weeks. I pulled in around 9 p.m. The office was small and dim, lit by a single fluorescent bulb that hummed and flickered. The guy behind the desk was older, maybe in his 60s, with deep wrinkles and tired eyes. He barely looked at me when I walked in. "Room," I said. It wasn't a question. He nodded, slid a key across the counter, and said something I didn't quite understand. His English was broken, his accent thick. I caught the words "Room 11" and "Check out at 10." I paid cash, took the key, and left. Room 11 was at the far end of the building, tucked into the corner away from the office. The door was warped, and I had to jiggle the key for a solid 30 seconds before it finally turned. When I pushed the door open, the smell hit me immediately. Cigarettes, mildew, old sweat, the kind of smell that gets into the walls and never leaves. I didn't care. I was too tired to care. I dropped my bag on the floor, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress was lumpy and the springs creaked under my weight, but it was better than sleeping in my car again. I thought about just collapsing right there, fully clothed, but I could feel the grime of 3 days on the road clinging to my skin. I needed to wash my face, brush my teeth, feel human again even for a few minutes. I walked into the bathroom. It was small, cramped, the kind of bathroom where you can barely turn around. The tiles were yellowed and cracked, and the mirror above the sink was spotted and dirty, like it hadn't been cleaned in years. I turned on the faucet. The pipes groaned and clanked, and the water came out brown for a few seconds before running clear. I splashed it on my face, the cold shocking me awake. I grabbed the scratchy towel hanging on the rack and dried off, then looked up at the mirror. That's when I saw him, a man, standing behind me, pale, gaunt, sunken eyes that stared straight ahead, straight at me. I froze. My heart stopped. My breath caught in my throat. For a second, I couldn't move, couldn't think, just stared at the reflection of this man standing less than 2 feet behind me. Then my brain caught up. I spun around. No one was there. The bathroom was empty. Just me. Just the cracked tiles and the dripping faucet and the stale, heavy air. I turned back to the mirror. He was still there. Closer now. So close I could see the details. The hollow curve of his cheeks. The dark circles under his eyes. The way his mouth hung slightly open, like he was trying to say something but couldn't. I stumbled backward, slamming into the doorframe. My hands were shaking. My legs felt weak. I couldn't take my eyes off the mirror. Off him. He didn't move, just stood there, staring, watching. I backed out of the bathroom, grabbed my keys, didn't even grab my bag, just ran. Out the door. Into the cold night air. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, could feel the adrenaline flooding my system, could taste the metallic tang of fear in my mouth. I banged on the office door, hard, over and over. "Hello? Someone? Please?" No answer. The lights were off. The place was locked up tight. I ran back to my car, got in, locked the doors and sat there, shaking. I didn't sleep, just sat there with the engine running, the heater on, staring at the door to room 11, waiting for something, anything to happen. Nothing did. When the sun came up, I went back to the office. A different guy was there, younger, maybe in his 40s. He looked up when I walked in, and I could see the question in his eyes before I even said anything. "Room 11, I said, my voice hoarse. "What happened in there?" His face changed. The casual, neutral expression disappeared, replaced by something I couldn't quite read. Discomfort, maybe fear. "We don't talk about that room," he said quietly. "I need to know." He shook his head. "You should just go. Please." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he sighed. "A man died in there. 5 years ago. Hanged himself." My stomach dropped. "Where?" He didn't answer. Didn't need to. I already knew. "In front of the mirror," I said. He nodded. Looked away. "They found him 3 days later. Maintenance guy went in to fix a leak and..." "Yeah. Why do you still rent it out?" "We don't. Not usually. But we were full last night. And..." He trailed off. Shrugged. "It's just a room." I wanted to scream at him. Wanted to ask why the hell he'd put me in there without warning me. But I didn't. I just left the key on the counter and walked out. That was 5 years ago. I've tried to move on. Tried to convince myself it was just exhaustion. Stress. My mind playing tricks on me. But I can't shake it. I can't forget the way he looked. The way he stared at me. The way he got closer even though I'd turned away. I don't look in mirrors anymore. Not if I can help it. When I brush my teeth, I stare at the sink. When I'm in a public bathroom, I keep my eyes down. At home, I've covered the mirrors with sheets. Because sometimes, not often, but sometimes, I catch a glimpse, out of the corner of my eye, in a reflection in a window, in the black screen of my phone when it's turned off. And I see him, still standing there, still watching, still waiting. I looked up the cactus in a couple years ago. Still there, still open. But the reviews mention room 11. People say they feel watched, that the bathroom feels wrong, that they see things in the mirror they can't explain. I think he's still there, trapped, caught between whatever this world is and wherever he was trying to go. And I think I know that when I looked in that mirror, I saw him. But I also think he saw me, and now he won't let go. I don't know what happens if I look in a mirror again. Really look. Not just a glimpse or an accidental glance. I'm terrified I'll see him standing right behind me, close enough to touch. Or worse, I'm terrified I'll see myself. But it won't be me. It'll be him, looking out through my eyes, wearing my face. I don't know which is worse, the idea that he's following me, or the idea that he's already inside. I was traveling for work and stopped at a motel in Nebraska. Nothing fancy, just a bed and a shower. But I should have kept driving. My name's Brian. I'm 41 now, but I was 38 when this happened. I work in medical equipment sales, which means I spend a lot of time on the road. Driving from hospital to hospital, clinic to clinic, spending nights in motels that all look the same. You get used to it after a while. The loneliness, the routine, the fact that every room smells like industrial cleaner and stale air. This was in November, late fall in Nebraska, which means gray skies and cold wind that cuts right through your jacket. I just finished a presentation in Omaha and was heading to North Platte for another meeting the next morning. It was about a 4-hour drive and I was planning to push through. But around 8 p.m., the exhaustion hit me like a wall. My eyes were heavy. My head was pounding. I needed to stop. I pulled off I-80 and found a motel just outside Kearney. The Plainview Inn. One of those single-story places with rooms that open directly to the parking lot. The sign out front was missing a few letters, and the whole place had that sad, forgotten look that cheap motels always have. The guy at the front desk was young. Early 20s, maybe. Skinny kid with greasy hair and a name tag that said, Tyler. He barely looked at me when I walked in. Just slid a key across the counter and told me I was in room 5. Checkout's at 11, he said, already looking back at his phone. I took the key and went to find the room. Room 5 was near the end of the building, sandwiched between an ice machine that rattled like it was about to die and a room with a do not disturb sign that looked like it had been hanging there for weeks. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not bad exactly, just stale, like the room hadn't been aired out in a while. The second thing I noticed was the stuff. A jacket, draped over the back of the chair by the window. Brown leather, worn. The kind of jacket someone wears for years until it becomes part of them. Pair of shoes by the bed. Men's sneakers, scuffed, laces untied. A can of soda on the nightstand, half empty, condensation still beating on the aluminum. I stood there for a second, staring. It looked like someone had just stepped out, like they'd be back any minute. I walked back to the office. Tyler looked up, annoyed. "Yeah, room 5, I said. "The previous guest left some stuff. Jacket, shoes. Can someone come clean it up?" He sighed. "Yeah, I'll send housekeeping." "When?" "I don't know, man. Soon." I went back to the room and waited. 20 minutes. 30. No one came. I called the front desk. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. I was too tired to care. I grabbed the jacket, the shoes, and the soda can and moved them to the corner of the room, stacking them in a pile by the closet. Out of sight, out of mind. I brushed my teeth, changed into a t-shirt and sweats, and collapsed onto the bed. I was asleep in minutes. I don't know what time it was when I woke up. Maybe midnight, maybe later, but I woke up suddenly, the way you do when something's wrong. My heart was already racing before I even opened my eyes. I lay there listening. The room was quiet, too quiet. No hum from the heater, no sound from the ice machine, just silence, heavy, oppressive. Then I heard it, movement, soft, deliberate, like someone was walking around the room. Slow footsteps, the creak of floorboards, the rustle of fabric. I sat up fast, reaching for the lamp on the nightstand. My hand was shaking. I turned it on, and the room flooded with dim, yellowish light. The jacket was back on the chair. The shoes were by the door. I stared at them, my breath caught in my throat. I'd moved them. I knew I had. I put them in the corner, out of the way. But now they were back, exactly where they'd been when I first walked in. I told myself I was confused, that I'd been too tired to remember correctly, that maybe I hadn't moved them at all. But I knew I had. I got out of bed and walked over to the chair. I picked up the jacket. It was cold, not just cool cold, like it had been left outside in the winter air. I carried it back to the corner and dropped it on the floor. Then I grabbed the shoes and tossed them next to it. I went back to bed, turned off the light, closed my eyes, told myself I was fine. I wasn't. I must have dozed off again because the next thing I knew, I was waking up for the second time. But this time it wasn't a sound that woke me. It was the blanket. Someone was tugging it. Not gently, hard, like they were trying to pull it off me. I opened my eyes, my heart hammering in my chest. The room was dark. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel it. The pressure, the weight, someone pulling the blanket toward the foot of the bed. I grabbed it, holding on tight, and sat up, fumbling for the lamp. My hands were shaking so badly I almost knocked it over. I finally found the switch and turned it on. No one was there, but the blanket was still moving, sliding, inch by inch, like invisible hands were pulling it. I yanked it back, breathing hard, my whole body trembling, and that's when I saw it. The impression, on the bed, right next to me, like someone was sitting there. The mattress was pressed down. The sheet was wrinkled. I could see the outline of where their legs would be, where their back would be. Someone was sitting next to me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I just stared at that impression, my mind screaming that it wasn't possible, that I was imagining it. Then the mattress shifted, like whoever was sitting there was adjusting their weight, getting comfortable. I bolted, grabbed my phone, my keys, my shoes, didn't even grab my bag, just ran. Out the door, into the cold. I got in my car, locked the doors, and sat there, shaking, my breath fogging up the windows. I didn't go back inside. I sat in that car until the sun came up. When I checked out the next morning, Tyler was still at the desk. He looked surprised to see me. Leaving already? It's only 7. Yeah, I said, my voice hoarse. I need to go. I hesitated. Then I asked, who stayed in room 5 before me? His face changed. The casual indifference disappeared, replaced by something else. Something uncomfortable. Why? Just tell me. He looked away, scratched the back of his neck. A guy, a couple months ago. What happened to him? Tyler sighed. He died. Heart attack. Alone. Took housekeeping 2 days to find him. I felt my stomach drop. In room 5. He nodded. We cleaned it. Got new sheets. New carpet. But he trailed off. But what? People don't like staying there. They say it feels off. I didn't say anything. Just left the key on the counter and walked out. That was 3 years ago. I've driven through Nebraska a dozen times since then. I pass that exit every time. And every time I think about stopping. About going back to room 5 and seeing if it's still there. But I don't. Because I know it is. I think about him sometimes. The man who died there. Alone. Waiting for someone to notice. And I think maybe that's what he was doing that night. Trying to get my attention. Trying to make me see him. I don't know if he's still there. But I know I'll never forget the way that mattress shifted. The way the blanket moved. The feeling of sitting next to something I couldn't see. Sometimes late at night I feel it again. That pressure on the bed. Like someone's sitting next to me. Watching me. Waiting. I tell myself it's just my imagination. But I don't believe it. I've stayed in bad motels before. Roach motels. Places where the sheets felt damp and you didn't want to know why. But the Twin Pines off I-40 was different. It wasn't just dirty. It was wrong. My name's Marcus. I'm 34 now, but I was 29 when this happened. I was working sales back then, driving all over the Southwest, sleeping in a different town every other night. It was exhausting, lonely work, but it paid the bills. I'd gotten used to the routine. Drive all day, check into whatever cheap motel had a vacancy sign. Sleep, repeat. I'd driven through New Mexico that day, and by the time I hit the Arizona border, I was dead tired. My eyes were burning. My back ached. I just needed a bed. Any bed. That's when I saw the Twin Pines Motel. The sign was half lit, missing a few letters, but I could make out vacancy glowing in sad, flickering neon. I pulled in around 11 p.m. The parking lot was nearly empty. Just a couple of cars, both covered in dust like they'd been sitting there for days. The office was attached to the main building, and through the window, I could see a woman slumped over the front desk, her head resting on her arms. I pushed open the door. The bell above it chimed weakly. She barely looked up. Mid-50s, maybe. Tired eyes. Hair pulled back in a greasy ponytail. She slid a registration card across the counter without saying a word. I filled it out and handed her my credit card. She ran it, gave me a key. An actual metal key, not a card, and muttered something I didn't quite catch. Sorry, what? AC's broken, she said, her voice flat. In your room. Room 12. Should be fixed tomorrow. I nodded. Didn't care. I just wanted to sleep. Thanks. She didn't respond. Just went back to whatever she'd been doing before I interrupted her. Room 12 was at the far end of the building, tucked away in the corner near a dumpster that was overflowing with black garbage bags. The smell hit me before I even got to the door. Sour. Rotting. I figured it was the trash and made a mental note to park on the other side in the morning. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. That's when the smell changed. It wasn't the dumpster. It was coming from inside the room. Thick, sweet, heavy, like rotten meat that had been sitting in the sun for days. I gagged, covering my nose with my shirt. My first thought was that a rat or something had died in the walls. Motels like this, it happens. I dealt with worse. I walked back to the office and knocked on the window. The woman looked up, annoyed. There's a smell in room 12, I said. Like something died. She stared at me for a long moment, then shrugged. "I'll have housekeeping check it in the morning. Can I get a different room? We're full." I looked back at the parking lot. 3 cars. Maybe 4. She was lying, but I was too tired to argue. I went back to the room, cracked the window as wide as it would go, and tried to ignore it. The smell didn't go away. If anything, it got stronger. But I told myself it was fine. I dealt with worse. I could tough it out for one night. I was wrong. I fell asleep around midnight, exhausted enough that even the smell couldn't keep me awake. But I didn't stay asleep for long. I woke up around 2 a.m., choking, gagging. The smell had gotten worse. So much worse. It was everywhere. In my nose, in my throat, clinging to my skin like oil. I sat up, gasping, my eyes watering. That's when I looked up. There was a stain on the ceiling. Dark, wet, spreading. It hadn't been there before. I was sure of it. I'd looked up at the ceiling when I first walked in, checking for water damage like I always did. It had been clean, stained, sure, but dry. Now there was a patch directly above the bed, maybe 3 feet wide, and it was getting bigger, spreading outward like something was seeping through from above. And it was dripping, slowly, 1 drop at a time. Thick, dark drops that fell onto the pillow where my head had been just seconds before. I scrambled out of bed, my heart pounding. My hands were shaking. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it at the ceiling. The stain was brown, almost black in the center. And the smell, God, the smell, it was coming from there, from whatever was soaking through the ceiling and dripping onto the bed. I backed up to the far corner of the room, as far from the bed as I could get, and called the front desk. It rang, and rang, and rang. No answer. I tried again. Nothing. I looked back at the bed. Another drop fell. Then another. The pillow was soaked now, dark and wet, and the smell was so strong I thought I was going to pass out. I grabbed my duffel bag, threw my stuff inside, and ran. I didn't close the door, didn't turn off the lights, just ran to my car, threw my bag in the back, and drove. I didn't stop until I was 50 miles down the highway. I tried to convince myself it was a leak, a burst pipe, old plumbing, something rational, but I couldn't shake the image of that stain spreading. The way it dripped, the smell. The next morning I called the motel. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted an explanation. Maybe I just wanted to hear someone tell me I'd overreacted. A man answered. Older. Gruff. Twin Pines. Yeah, hi. I stayed in room 12 last night. There was. Room 12. Yeah, there was a stain on the ceiling. It was dripping, and the smell. We don't rent out room 12, he said, cutting me off. I froze. What? Room 12's been closed for 6 months. Who checked you in? The woman at the desk. Last night. Around 11. There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing on the other end. There's no one here at night, he said quietly. We lock up at 9. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. I checked in. She gave me a key. What key? I looked down at my hand. I was still holding it. The metal key with a plastic tag that said 12. I have it right here, I said. Another pause. Then, that room's been locked since May. The last guest who stayed there. They found him dead. Had been for about a week before anyone noticed. I felt cold. My hands started shaking again. What happened to him? Don't know. Natural causes, they said. But the smell, he trailed off. They had to gut the whole room, rip out the carpet, the mattress, even part of the ceiling. But we couldn't get rid of it. The smell. It just stayed. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. You shouldn't have been in there, he said. How'd you even get in? I hung up. That was 5 years ago. I don't work in sales anymore. I quit a month after it happened. Couldn't do it. Couldn't stay in motels. Couldn't even drive past them without feeling sick. But the worst part? The smell. I can still smell it. Not all the time. Just sometimes. When I'm alone. When it's quiet. I'll be lying in bed, and I'll catch a whiff of it. Thick, sweet, rotting. And for a second, I'm back in room 12, staring up at that stain, watching it spread. I've moved 3 times since then. Different states, different apartments. It doesn't matter. The smell follows me. I looked up the Twin Pines a few years ago. It's still there, still open. But if you look at the reviews online, no one mentions room 12. No one talks about the smell. It's like it doesn't exist. But I know it does. And I know somehow it's still there, waiting. I don't know if it was the room, or the man who died there, or something worse. But whatever it was, I brought a piece of it with me. And I don't think it's ever letting go. I was 19 and driving cross-country when my car broke down outside Amarillo. I don't drive through Texas anymore. Not if I can help it. Let me back up. It was the summer after my first year of college. I was young, stupid, and convinced I needed to find myself, or whatever cliché thing teenagers tell themselves when they want an excuse to run away. I'd loaded up my beat-up Toyota Corolla with everything I owned and pointed it west. No real plan, no destination, just me, a duffel bag, and a playlist I thought was deep. I made it as far as the Texas Panhandle before the engine started making a sound like a dying animal. Grinding, rattling, then nothing. Just smoke pouring out from under the hood and the smell of burning oil. I coasted to the shoulder of a 2-lane highway surrounded by flat, empty land that stretched out in every direction. No buildings, no gas stations, just dirt and sky. I sat there for 20 minutes before I saw the sign. Hand-painted, faded. Cactus Court Motel 2 miles. An arrow pointing down a side road I hadn't noticed. I didn't have much choice. My phone had 1 bar of service and a dying battery. AAA said it'd be 6 hours before they could get someone out. So I grabbed my bag, locked the car, and started walking. The motel looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. Low-slung building, peeling turquoise paint, a gravel parking lot with weeds growing through the cracks. The sign out front was missing half its letters, so it just read, "Sir." There were only 3 cars in the lot, all of them covered in dust like they'd been there for weeks. The office smelled like burnt coffee and cigarettes. The guy behind the desk was older, maybe mid-60s, with a stained polo shirt and a face that looked like it had seen too much sun. He smiled when I walked in, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Car trouble?" he asked. "Yeah. Broke down a couple miles back. Just need a place to crash for the night." He nodded, sliding a key across the counter. "Room 3, $40. Checkouts at 11. Breakfast starts at 7, but don't get your hopes up. It's just coffee and some muffins." I paid cash, took the key, and asked if there was a mechanic nearby. He said there was one in town about 15 miles away and that he'd call them in the morning. I thanked him and walked out. Room 3 was at the far end of the building, next to a flickering ice machine that hummed and rattled like it was possessed. The room was exactly what you'd expect. Floral bedspread, stained carpet, a TV bolted to the dresser. The air conditioner didn't work, so I cracked the window and let the dry, dusty wind blow in. I was exhausted. I'd been driving for 12 hours, and the adrenaline from the breakdown had worn off. I kicked off my shoes, plugged in my phone, and collapsed onto the bed. I was asleep in minutes. The knocking woke me up. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. I opened my eyes, groggy and disoriented. The room was dark except for the dim orange glow of the parking lot lights bleeding through the curtains. I checked my phone. 2:34 a.m. The knocking came again. Same rhythm. Same spot. It sounded like it was coming from the wall behind the bed. I figured it was the people next door. Maybe they were watching TV too loud. Maybe they were arguing. I tried to ignore it, but it didn't stop. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. Over and over. Perfectly timed. Mechanical, almost. I sat up, rubbing my eyes. My head was pounding, and my mouth was dry. I grabbed the cheap plastic cup from the bathroom, filled it with tap water, and drank it in one go. The knocking continued. I walked over to the wall and pressed my ear against it. The sound was clearer now, deliberate, like someone tapping with their knuckles. I could feel the vibrations through the drywall. I banged on the wall with my fist. Hard. Stop! The knocking stopped. I stood there, breathing hard, my hands still pressed against the wall. Silence. Complete silence. I thought maybe I'd scared them off. I walked back to the bed and lay down. Then I heard it. On my door. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. My blood went cold. I didn't move. Just lay there, staring at the door, listening. The taps came again. Same rhythm. Same deliberate spacing. I could hear something else now, too. Breathing. Heavy. Wet. Like someone standing just outside. Their mouth close to the crack in the door. I forced myself to get up. My legs felt weak. My hands were shaking. I walked to the door as quietly as I could and looked through the peephole. No one. The walkway was empty. The parking lot was empty. Just the flickering glow of the lights and the hum of the ice machine. But I could still hear the breathing. Right there. On the other side of the door. So close I could almost feel it. I stepped back. My heart was hammering in my chest. I thought about opening the door. Thought about yelling. But something stopped me. Some instinct buried deep in my brain that said, Don't open it. I grabbed my phone and called the front desk. It rang, and rang, and rang. No answer. The knocking stopped. The breathing stopped. Everything went silent. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at the door, waiting for it to start again. But it didn't. The only sound was the hum of the ice machine and the faint whistle of wind through the cracked window. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Just sat on the bed with my back against the wall, watching the door, waiting for sunrise. When the sky started to turn gray, I packed my bag and left. I didn't shower, didn't brush my teeth. Just grabbed my stuff and walked to the office. The same guy was there, sitting behind the desk with a cup of coffee and a newspaper. He looked up when I walked in and smiled. Heading out already? Thought you'd stay for breakfast. I need to check out, I said, my voice shaking. Everything okay? I hesitated. Then I said, the knocking. In room 3. All night. Who was in the rooms next to me? His smile faded. He put down his coffee and stared at me. There's no one in the rooms next to you, he said slowly. They're under renovation. Have been for months. I felt my stomach drop. That's impossible. Someone was knocking. On the wall. On my door. I heard them breathing. His face went pale. He stood up, walked around the desk, and looked at me like I just told him I'd seen a ghost. Room 3, he said quietly. What about it? He shook his head. We don't rent that room out anymore. Shouldn't have given it to you. I forgot. Why not? He looked away. The last guy who stayed there, he died. Heart attack. They found him 3 days later, slumped against the door. They said he'd been trying to get out. Scratched his fingernails bloody trying to unlock it from the inside. I felt like I was going to be sick. Why would he do that? I asked. The owner didn't answer. Just said, you should go. I didn't argue. I left the key on the counter and walked out. My car was still on the side of the highway, but I didn't care. I walked the 2 miles back, called a tow truck, and didn't look back. That was 6 years ago. I still hear it sometimes. Late at night, when the house is quiet and I'm trying to fall asleep. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. Always the same rhythm. Always the same spot. I've moved 4 times since then. Different cities. I was broke and desperate when I took the manager job at the Starlight Motel outside Reno. It wasn't much. 12 units, a gravel parking lot, and a blinking vacancy sign that buzzed all night like a dying insect. But it came with free room and board, and after 3 months of couch surfing and living out of my car, I wasn't in a position to be picky. My name's Amanda. I'm 31 now, but I was 27 when this happened. I'd just gone through a divorce that left me with nothing but a Honda Civic with a cracked windshield and about $200 to my name. The Starlight was my last option. The owner, a guy named Mr. Garrett, barely looked at me during the interview. Just asked if I could handle cleaning rooms and checking in guests. I said yes. He handed me the keys and told me I'd be staying in Unit 12. Don't go in room 7, he said as I was leaving. It's being renovated. I should have asked more questions, but I didn't. I needed the job too badly. The first week was fine. Quiet mostly. A few truckers. A couple who paid cash and didn't make eye contact. A traveling salesman who complained about the TV not working. Standard motel stuff. I cleaned the rooms, changed the sheets, restocked the little soaps and shampoos. It was mind-numbing work, but it kept me busy. Kept me from thinking about how my life had fallen apart. Room 7 was at the end of the row, tucked away from the others like it didn't want to be noticed. The door was always locked. The curtain was always drawn. At least that's what I thought. On my 8th day there, I was doing my morning rounds, checking which rooms needed cleaning. When I got to room 7, I stopped. The curtain was open, wide open. The cheap floral fabric was pushed all the way to the side, and I could see straight into the room. The bed was made. The lights were off. Everything looked normal, but something about it made my stomach twist. I walked over and pulled the curtain closed, tugged it hard to make sure it stayed. Then I checked the door. Locked. I tested the handle twice. Solid. The next morning, it was open again. I stood there in the cold, early morning air, staring at that window. The curtain was pulled back in the exact same way, like someone had carefully positioned it. I looked around the parking lot. Empty. No cars except mine and a pickup truck that belonged to the guy in Unit 3. I closed the curtain again, checked the lock again, told myself it was the wind. Old building, loose fixtures. Happens all the time. But I didn't believe it. It happened every single morning for 2 weeks. I closed the curtain, locked the door, walk away, and the next day it'd be open again. I started checking the room multiple times a day. Morning, afternoon, night. Every time the curtain was closed. But by the time the sun came up, it was open again. I asked Mr. Garrett about it. Called him on a Tuesday afternoon and tried to sound casual. Hey, room 7. The curtain keeps opening. Is there a draft in there or something? There was a long pause on the other end. Then he said, "Just leave it alone, Amanda." But, leave it. He hung up. That should have been my second warning. Couldn't let it go. It was driving me crazy. I'd lie awake in Unit 12, staring at the ceiling, thinking about that curtain, about how it moved, about the way the room felt when I stood outside it, like something was watching me through the glass. So one night, I decided to watch back. It was a Friday. No guests checked in that day, so the motel was empty except for me. I made a thermos of coffee, grabbed a blanket from my room, and parked my car at the far end of the lot, where I had a clear view of room 7. I turned off the engine and waited. The hours crawled by. Midnight came and went. Then 1. Then 2. My eyes were starting to burn. I thought about giving up, going back to bed, forgetting the whole thing. Then, at 3:07 a.m., the curtain moved. Not fast, not sudden, slowly, like fingers gently pulling it aside. Inch by inch, deliberate. My heart started pounding. I sat up straighter, gripping the steering wheel. The curtain kept moving until it was fully open, and that's when I saw her. A woman, standing in the window. She was wearing a white nightgown, long and old-fashioned, like something from the 1950s. Her hair was dark and hung limply around her face. Her skin was pale, too pale, like she'd never seen the sun. And she was staring, directly at me, not at the parking lot, not at the sky, at me. Couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking so hard the car keys jingled in my lap. She didn't blink, didn't move. Just stood there, watching me with eyes that looked hollow even from across the lot. Then she raised one hand, slowly, and pressed it against the glass. That broke the spell. I threw open the car door and ran. I don't even remember grabbing the master key. I just remember running across the gravel, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps, my hands fumbling with the lock. I shoved the door open. The room was empty. The bed was made. The lights were off. No luggage, no woman, no sign anyone had been there. But the air was freezing, colder than it should have been. Cold enough that I could see my breath in the dim light from the parking lot. I stepped inside, my legs shaking, and looked around. That's when I saw it. On the window, on the inside of the glass, written in something wet and streaky like condensation or, God, I don't even want to think about what else it could have been, were 2 words: let me out. I stumbled backward. My heel caught on the door frame and I almost fell. I turned and ran. Didn't close the door. Didn't lock it. Just ran back to Unit 12, locked myself inside, and didn't come out until the sun was up. I called Mr. Garrett the next day. Told him everything. The woman, the writing on the glass, the cold. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You shouldn't have opened it." "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What's in that room?" "It doesn't matter," he said. "Just stay away from it." "Who was she?" "Amanda." "Who was she?" Another long pause. Then, quietly, "Her name was Evelyn. She died in that room 30 years ago. Locked herself in. Wouldn't let anyone help her. By the time we broke the door down, she'd been dead for 3 days." I felt sick. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it doesn't matter. She's gone. She's been gone." "Then why did I see her?" He didn't answer. Just said, "Don't go in that room again," and hung up. I quit 2 days later, packed my car, left the keys on the desk, and drove away. I didn't say goodbye, didn't leave a note, just left. But she didn't. I see her sometimes. In reflections. In windows. In my rearview mirror when I'm driving at night. Always the same. Always in that white nightgown. Always watching. I don't know what I let out when I opened that door. I don't know if she's following me, or if she's still trapped in room 7, waiting for someone else to make the same mistake. But I know one thing. She's not gone. And I don't think she ever will be. Sometimes late at night I hear tapping. Soft. Rhythmic. Like fingers on glass. And I know she's trying to get in. I just hope the doors stay locked. I worked the night shift at a roadside motel in Montana for 2 years. Saw a lot of weird stuff, but nothing like him. My name's Derek. I'm 28 now, but I was 24 when this happened. Fresh out of a bad breakup, living in a studio apartment in Missoula that smelled like the previous tenant's cat. The night shift at the Pines Edge Motel paid $12 an hour under the table, and the owner didn't ask questions as long as I showed up on time. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept the lights on. Most nights were quiet, truckers passing through, families trying to save money on their way to Glacier, the occasional couple who didn't want to be seen together. I'd check them in, hand over the keys, and spend the rest of my shift watching YouTube on my phone or reading paperbacks I'd buy from the thrift store down the road. I got used to the strange stuff pretty quickly. People leaving in the middle of the night without checking out. Rooms that always smelled like cigarettes no matter how many times housekeeping cleaned them. Guests who swore they heard voices in the walls. After a while, you stop questioning it. You just accept that some places have a weird energy. But this was different. This I can't explain. It was a Tuesday in late October. Cold enough that you could see your breath, but not cold enough for snow yet. The kind of night where the wind cuts through your jacket and makes you want to stay inside. I was working the desk, halfway through a bag of gas station chips, when the bell above the door chimed. I looked up. He was tall, maybe 6'3", 6'4", wearing a dark jacket, jeans, and sunglasses. At midnight, I remember thinking that was weird, but not weird enough to say anything. People wear sunglasses at night all the time. Maybe he had a medical condition. Maybe he was just trying to look cool. He walked up to the desk without saying a word. Just stood there, staring at me. Or at least I think he was staring. I couldn't see his eyes. "Need a room?" I asked. He nodded. "Once." Slow. "How many nights?" "1." His voice was flat. No emotion. Like he was reading from a script. "That'll be 45, I said, sliding the registration form across the counter. "Cash or card?" He pulled out a wallet and handed me 2 20s and a 5. Didn't fill out the form. Didn't give me a name. Just pointed at the key rack behind me. "Room 14, he said. I hesitated. Room 14 wasn't special. It was just another room. But the way he said it, like it wasn't a request, like it was the only option, made my skin prickle. "Sure," I said. "Room 14. I grabbed the key, handed it to him, and watched as he turned and walked out. He didn't say thank you, didn't acknowledge me, just walked across the parking lot toward the row of rooms and disappeared into the dark. I went back to my phone, told myself it was just another weird guest. That should have been my first warning. 10 minutes later, the bell rang again. I looked up. Same guy, same jacket, same sunglasses, standing in the exact same spot. I blinked. My brain was trying to catch up. For a second, I thought maybe I'd imagined the first time. Maybe I'd been scrolling too long and zoned out. But no, I remembered. I'd given him the key. I'd watched him leave. "Can I help you?" I asked slowly. He didn't move, just stood there, silent. "Room 14, he said. My stomach dropped. You already checked in," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Like 10 minutes ago. I gave you the key." He didn't blink, didn't react, just repeated in that same flat, dead tone. "Room 14. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Something was wrong, really wrong. But I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe he had dementia, or maybe he was on something. People do weird stuff when they're high. "Okay," I said quietly. Let me walk you to the room. Make sure everything's okay." I grabbed the master key from the drawer and came around the desk. He didn't move, just stood there waiting. I walked past him toward the door, and he followed. I could hear his footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate, too evenly spaced. The cold hit me the second I stepped outside. The parking lot was empty except for a few cars. The wind had picked up, rattling the metal awning above the walkway. I led him to room 14 and knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. I looked back at him. He was standing a few feet behind me, perfectly still, hands at his sides, waiting. "Maybe you left already?" I muttered, more to myself than to him. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The room was empty. The bed was made. The curtains were drawn. No luggage. No sign that anyone had been there at all. I stood in the doorway, staring. My brain was screaming that something was wrong, but I couldn't figure out what. I turned around to ask him what was going on. He was gone. Just gone. The walkway was empty. The parking lot was empty. I looked left, then right, then back toward the office. Nothing. No footsteps. No sound. He just vanished. I felt my chest tighten. My hands started shaking. I walked back to the office as fast as I could without running, locked the door behind me, and sat down at the desk. I told myself I was tired, that I'd imagined it, that there was a rational explanation. But I didn't believe it. I didn't sleep that night, just sat at the desk, staring at the security monitor. The grainy black and white feed showed the parking lot, the walkway, the office door. I kept rewinding it, watching the timestamp, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. At 12:47 a.m., the door opened. A tall man in sunglasses walked in, stood at the desk, walked out. At 12:58 a.m., the door opened again. The same man, same clothes, same walk. He stood at the desk. Then the camera showed me walking outside with him, showed us standing in front of room 14, showed me opening the door, and then it showed me walking back to the office. Alone. There was no second figure, no man following me back, no one disappearing into the dark. I rewound it again, and again, and again. The first man walked in. The second man walked in. But only the first one ever walked out. I quit 3 days later. Didn't give notice. Didn't explain. Just told the owner I couldn't do it anymore and left. I've tried to rationalize it. Tried to come up with an explanation that makes sense. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe there were two guys who looked identical. Maybe the camera glitched. But I know what I saw. I know I walked that man to room 14. I know the room was empty. I know he was there and then he wasn't. And I know deep down, in a way I can't explain, that I let something into that room. Something that wasn't human. I drove past the Pine's Edge a few months ago. It's still there. Still open. The neon sign still flickers. I thought about stopping. Thought about asking if anyone had stayed in room 14 recently. But I didn't. because part of me doesn't want to know. Part of me is terrified that if I go back, I'll see him again, standing at the desk, sunglasses at midnight, asking for room 14. And this time I won't be able to leave. I still see him sometimes, in my rearview mirror, in reflections, in the corner of my vision when I'm trying to fall asleep. Always the same, always still, always watching. I don't know what he was. I don't know what he wanted, but I know he's still there, waiting in room 14. I don't stay in motels anymore, not after what happened in Bakersfield. Let me back up. I was 32 when this happened. Been driving trucks for almost a decade by then. Long hauls, mostly California to Texas, sometimes up to Washington. The kind of work that keeps you moving, keeps you alone. I didn't mind it. I had my podcasts, my coffee, my routine. Pull off at truck stops. Grab whatever food didn't look like it had been sitting under a heat lamp for 3 days. Find a cheap place to crash, and repeat. The Desert Rose Motel was one of those places you'd miss if you blinked. Off Highway 58, just outside Bakersfield. Peeling pink paint that might have looked charming in the 60s but just looked sad now. A flickering neon sign that buzzed so loud you could hear it from the parking lot. The kind of place where the owner doesn't ask questions and you don't ask why the rates are so cheap. It was late, past midnight. I'd been driving for 14 hours straight, and my eyes were starting to burn. I told myself I'd just push through to Barstow, but my body had other plans. My hands were shaking on the wheel. My vision kept blurring. So when I saw that pink neon glowing in the dark, I pulled in. The office smelled like stale cigarettes and pine sol. The guy at the desk didn't look up when I walked in. Just slid a key across the counter and muttered, "Room 9, checkouts at 11. I should have noticed how quickly he said it, like he'd been waiting to get rid of that key. But I didn't. I was too tired. The room was at the far end of the building, tucked into the corner like an afterthought. The door stuck when I tried to open it, like the wood had swollen from years of humidity. I had to shove it with my shoulder. When it finally gave, the smell hit me first. Not rot, not mildew, something else. Something stale and wrong. Like someone had been living there for weeks and then just left. The air was thick, heavy, pressed against my skin. I flicked on the light. The bulb buzzed and flickered before settling into a dim, yellowish glow. The room was what you'd expect. Floral bedspread that hadn't been in style since the 80s. A TV bolted to the dresser. A bathroom with a cracked mirror and rust stains in the sink. And then I heard it. The shower. Running. I froze. Stood there in the doorway with my duffel bag still slung over my shoulder, listening to the sound of water hitting tile. Steady. Consistent. Like someone was in there. I thought maybe housekeeping had forgotten to turn it off. That happens sometimes, right? People rush through their shifts, miss things. I walked over to the bathroom door, put my hand on the knob. It was cold. I opened it. The tiles were bone dry. Not a single drop of water. Not on the floor, not in the tub, not on the walls. But I could still hear it. That sound. That unmistakable hiss of water hitting porcelain. And then it stopped. Just like that. Complete silence. I stood there staring at the dry shower for a long time. My brain was trying to make sense of it. Old pipes, maybe. Sound carrying from another room. I told myself I was too tired, that my mind was playing tricks on me. That should have been my first warning. I didn't shower, didn't even brush my teeth. I just dropped my bag on the floor, kicked off my boots, and collapsed onto the bed. The mattress was lumpy and smelled faintly of mothballs, but I didn't care. I was asleep in minutes. I don't know how long I was out. Could have been an hour, could have been 3. But I woke up suddenly, the way you do when something's wrong. The room was dark. The only light came from the edges of the curtains, that sickly orange glow from the parking lot outside. I didn't move, just lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what had woken me. Then I felt it. The mattress shifted, not like I'd rolled over, like someone sat down, right next to me, on the edge of the bed. I stopped breathing. I could feel the weight of it, the way the springs compressed, the way the blanket pulled slightly to the side. I wanted to turn my head, wanted to look, But I couldn't. My body wouldn't move. It was like I was frozen, pinned to the bed by something I couldn't see. And then I heard her. A woman's voice. Soft, almost a whisper, right by my ear. "You're in my spot." I didn't think. I just moved, grabbed my keys off the nightstand, threw on my boots without tying them, and ran. I didn't close the door behind me, didn't grab my bag, didn't even look back. I got in my truck, locked the doors, and sat there shaking. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely get the key in the ignition. I didn't turn on the radio, didn't try to rationalize what had just happened. I just drove. I didn't stop until the sun came up. The next morning, I was 2 hours outside Bakersfield when I finally pulled over at a rest stop. I needed coffee, needed to convince myself I'd dreamed the whole thing, that I'd been exhausted and hallucinating. But I couldn't shake the feeling, that weight on the bed, that voice. I called the motel. Don't ask me why. Maybe I wanted someone to tell me I was crazy. Maybe I just needed to hear a normal explanation. The same guy answered, sounded annoyed. "Desert Rose, what do you want?" I told him about room 9, about the shower, about what I'd heard. There was a long pause. Then he laughed. Not a funny laugh, a bitter, tired laugh. "Yeah," he said. "Room 9. Should have figured." "What do you mean?" Another pause. "We don't rent that room out anymore. Hasn't been used in 3 years. Not since the woman who died in there." My stomach dropped. "What woman?" "Overdose," he said, like it was nothing. "Took a bunch of pills and locked herself in. Housekeeping found her a week later. Been trying to get rid of the smell ever since. But nobody wants to stay in there." "Then why did you give me the key?" He didn't answer, just hung up. I went back a few months later. Don't ask me why. Maybe I needed to prove to myself that I'd imagined it. That it was just exhaustion and bad plumbing and my own paranoia. The Desert Rose was still there. Same peeling paint. Same flickering neon. But when I asked about room 9, the woman at the desk, different person this time, looked at me like I'd said something obscene. "We don't talk about room 9, she said quietly. "Why not?" She leaned in closer. Her eyes were tired, sad. "Because people who stay in there don't come back." I didn't ask what she meant. I just left. I still drive trucks, still pull long hauls. But I don't stay in motels anymore. I sleep in my cab, even if it means waking up with a sore back and a stiff neck. Because sometimes, late at night when I'm trying to fall asleep, I feel it again. That weight on the mattress, that shift in the air, and I swear I can still hear her voice. "You're in my spot." I don't know what she wants. I don't know why she's still there. But I know she's not done. And I know I'll never go back to room 9.